Hi, my name is Amanda Nicole. I am a Christian life coach and teacher at the Freedom Through Divorce online school. This content is created for the sole purpose of bringing awareness of the school and the kind of content that I teach to the women that desperately need it. Thank you for joining me. I pray that God will speak to you and that you will experience freedom while you listen. So today I want to talk about the fear and the stigma that's associated with the subject of divorce. I think that's a really important subject to talk about because, especially in this Christian community, that is what keeps so many women in the cycle of the unauthorized marriage, is that just that fear of all of the stigma that's associated with divorce and all of the bad things associated with it. And we're just led to believe that it's just so terrible and there's nothing good that comes from it. But that's not what Scripture says. Scripture says that what the enemy meant for bad, God could turn around for good. And that is important to note and to remember as a Christian, that when you're in an unauthorized marriage and you're in a marriage that is just untenable and that is draining the life out of you and your spiritual life and your children, staying in it just because you're fearful doesn't guarantee a better result than divorce. You want to make sure that you're, just remembering who God is and that He can do anything, and that, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. And so you can't box yourself into this, I have to stay no matter what, because I'm so afraid of the consequences of divorce. Because that mindset is a mindset of, well, I don't have a creator. I don't have a Lord. I don't have, someone that can turn my situation around for good. God can get glory out of anything. And, if you are feeling that God has just placed on your heart and is leading you towards divorce, you have to remember that. You have to remember who He is, and remember that He can do anything, and that He, that no situation is just, he can't fix it. He can't bring any good out of it. He can't get any glory out of it. He can't deliver you from it. You can't live that way. You can't have that mindset, because that's just not a believer's mindset. And that's what the enemy uses to keep people in bondage, is that he focuses your attention on what happens to other people. But there are so many people that, are grateful for their divorce, are grateful for that difficult and tough time, because it just brought so much, good fruit and so much joy and peace, and just brought them into all of the wonderful things that God had for them. And so those are not the stories that are highlighted in the news, and those are not the stories that are highlighted in general conversation. As a matter of fact, most people who have been through divorce and have, gotten on the other side of it, by the time they're remarried and, thriving, they don't even talk about it anymore. To them, it's a distant memory. And so you hear the stories of the people who have divorced and stayed stuck and bitter, and, they have allowed it to just control their lives. And that's not what freedom through divorce is about. It's about getting to that other side of freedom. It's about going through a divorce and not staying in it. And that's what it's all about. And so I don't want you to let the enemy keep you in bondage in fear, because that's one of his number one tactics, is that if he can keep you too afraid to move, he can keep you stuck in that place that you've been in for years and years and years. And he can keep you from even exploring the possibility that this isn't the will of God for me, and I need to figure out what the will of God for me is, so that I can experience all of the fruits of His Spirit that He has for me. So I want to talk about my own personal situation and one of the things I've learned from my divorce that have just been good fruit. Okay. Because, I always tell people divorce isn't worth it unless you can get to the other side and get to that part of freedom. If you're just going to stay stuck, then you might as well stay stuck, but if you're going to move towards freedom, then you need to move towards freedom. And so I know in my own personal journey, my divorce has definitely taught me how to truly trust God in my life. There's nothing like being a single mom and having no one but God to teach you how to trust him and to teach you what that really looks like tangibly outside of just, it sounds good. But there is nothing like when you just don't have anybody but him to teach you how to trust him and to teach you how trustworthy he is, that you really truly can leave your life in his hands. He really is qualified to be the Lord over your life and to lead you and guide you and to have you cast your cares on him and not worry about the cares of the world. That is one of the things that when you're able to push through that just mountain of fear associated with divorce, you're able to cast those fears on him. And that's the way that you're able to push through it, is that you're able to say, if God be for me, then who can be against me? And whatever those fears were, I mean, it can't hold up against God and his love for us. And that's another thing, is that it just really, that's one of the things that motivated me in the beginning to even pursue divorce, is because God showed me his love for me. And he showed me that, oh, hey, my love for you is not for you to be, mistreated and just, treated any kind of way. That's not my heart for you. And so once I began to understand what his heart for me really was, it was very easy to see that the situation that I was in wasn't one that he would have put me in. And so it just really helps you to be able to understand and kind of put a mirror up to the love of God so that you're able to see, hey, he wants better for me than this. And I'm going to stick it out to be able to see that, to be able to have that manifest in my life, to see what exactly his heart was for me before I made the decision to steer off, to veer off track, and get myself in this predicament. And so there's another thing that is, you learn how to depend on God in your day-to-day life, and the importance of having a close relationship with him. There's one thing when you, kind of pray after your meals or pray before you go to bed or, pray when you need something. But it just, when you are a single parent, you really, you draw closer to God because you need him so much and you talk to him so often. It just brings you closer to him and you get to know him in a more real and tangible way. And so you're just able to be in his presence more and to feel his presence more and not feel so alone. A lot of people that have been in an unauthorized marriage know that you can be married and be completely lonely and just feel like you're all in it by yourself and you don't have anyone to talk to and no one knows what you're going through. And it can be the exact opposite, when you're traveling through the divorce and you might actually be alone. You might actually be, a single parent, but you know that God's with you and you feel his presence and you don't feel alone. And so that's another fruit that can come out of it. And so there are so many wonderful, just byproducts and fruits to getting out of an unauthorized marriage. People are just, all of the things that people say that are negative about divorce is usually associated with, emotionally healthy people that divorce for reasons that are petty. And that is rarely the case. That's rarely the case. Most people who, if they're willing to put themselves through something as difficult as divorce, there are some real serious issues there. And so when you're in an unauthorized marriage, getting towards that freedom and getting towards God and knowing God and experiencing his perfect will for you and his plan and purpose for you, there's nothing that can compare to that. It's like Paul said when he said the present sufferings of this world can't compare. And that's what it's talking about is, the sufferings of going through a divorce, even though they are very difficult and it's just hard, when you get to the other side, it's nothing can compare to what God has for you on the other side. Nothing can compare to his plan and purpose for you, and being able to experience that and to see that and touch it and feel it, and even being able to let your kids see it and feel it and touch it. There's just, you can't trade that for anything, to be able to have that opportunity to be able to have God show himself mighty to you and then do it in front of your kids and allow their relationship with him to be solidified even as he shows himself to you. There's just nothing that you can trade for that. So I just wanted to encourage anyone who is, the enemy is just having them be so fearful that they just are like, I'm going to have to stay in this, even though it's untenable, even though it's just, abusive, even though I know that it's not God's will for me. I have to stay. I just want to encourage you that, God can turn all things around for his good, and nothing is impossible with God. And so I want you to remember that, and I want you to be encouraged with that. This course is material that I got straight from God when I was in that same situation where I felt like my situation was just completely untenable. I had been in it for years and I felt like I needed to get out, but I needed to know, what does God say? When is divorce acceptable? Is there a time when it's acceptable? Is there a time when it's actually necessary? How do I know? How do I get that, okay in my spirit to say, all right, this is what I need to do? All of those questions I went straight to God with, and he answered every single one of them. And I put the answers to every single one of them in this course. So if you are a Christian woman that feels like divorce is, the only option for you, and you want to hear God speak on it before you make such a drastic decision, or if you're in a situation where you've already gotten a divorce, but you never did hear God clearly, and you wonder if you made the right decision, this course is for you. I encourage you to order this course to allow God to speak truth to you and to bring freedom so that you don't feel condemned.